Still more things left in the magic item department for Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. This time we're going to be talking about the Arms of the Betrayer. These are the evil artifacts, the sort of counter to the Vestiges of Divergence. If you want to see what those are, and they're pretty sweet, stay tuned. So let us jump over to D&D Beyond. So here you can see the Arms of the Betrayers. First of all, I will point out that these are sentient magic items. That means that they do have, maybe I'll do a separate video on sentient magic items in general in the future, but sentient magic items are items that, again, they have a mind of themselves. You've seen this, I'm sure, in fantasy lore. If you think about the One Ring, probably a really good example of basically, it wasn't a sentient weapon, it was a sentient item per se. And again, if you think about it, the ring kind of had a mind of its own where it went where it wanted. I'm using that as an example because it's probably one of the more well-known examples of that. But again, if you've watched Critical Role, you'll know of them from Campaign 1. Don't think anything's been encountered in that department in Campaign 2 yet, but, you know, whatever, we'll see. So anyway, there's that part of it. These are also artifacts, and artifacts in 5th edition have things called beneficial and detrimental properties, and there's minor and major versions of those. And it's important that we do a quick rundown of what that is, because the different tiers, I should also say, the Arms of the Betrayers do have the same breakdown as the Vestiges of Divergence. They do have a dormant, exalted, and awakened state, or I think I did that backwards. Dormant, awakened, and exalted state. So they still go through the things, the traversals to become more powerful, and they do also have basically the same process, right? The same things that would make one go from dormant to awakened to exalted. It's the same set of properties for the Arms of the Betrayer as it would be for the Vestiges of Divergence. So let us look right here. It says when you get them in their dormant state, they have one minor beneficial property and one minor detrimental property. When they are awakened, it gets another minor beneficial property and an additional minor detrimental property. And when it reaches its exalted state, it gets a major beneficial property. So if we go over to this is Chapter 7, Sentient Magic Items in the DMG, you can see here minor beneficial properties. You gain proficiency in a skill, immunity to disease, can't be charmed or frightened, resistance to a damage type. You can cast a cantrip as an action. You can cast a first level spell from it. When you cast this spell, roll a d6. On a 1 to 5, you can't cast a spell again until the next dawn, but if you roll a 6, you can continue to cast that spell. And then it's the same thing, but it's a second level spell, the same thing, but it's a third level spell, or it gives you a +1 to your AC. So that covers the minor beneficial properties. We have minor detrimental properties that you'd also have. Disadvantage, these can be pretty hampering. Disadvantage on saving throws versus spells. Whenever you touch jewelry or gems, the value decreases by half. While attuned to it, you are blinded when you are more than 10 feet away from the item itself. You have disadvantage on saving throws against poison. You emit a sour stench noticeable from 10 feet away. All holy water within 10 feet of you is destroyed. You are physically ill and have disadvantage on ability checks or saving throws that cost that use strength or con. Your weight increases. I mean, these don't necessarily mean they're too crazy, but your appearance changes as the DM decides. You are deafened when you are more than 10 feet away from the item. Your weight drops by a certain amount. You can't smell. Non-magical flames are extinguished within 30 feet of you. The other creatures can't take short or long rests within 300 feet of you. That could be brutal. You deal a d6 necrotic damage to any plant you touch that isn't a creature. Animals within 30 feet of you are hostile towards you. You must eat and drink 6 times the normal amount each day. And your flaw is amplified, the flaw you have from your background, which is, again, something that hopefully you're considering and your DM considers. It's amplified in a way determined by the DM. So those are the minor and the major. You'd have 2 of each with one of these Arms of the Betrayers fully unlocked and 1 major beneficial property. An ability score of the DM's choice increases by 2 to a maximum of 24. You regain a d6 hit points when you start your turn and have at least 1 hit point. When you hit with a weapon attack while attuned to it, it does an extra d6 of the weapon's damage type. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. Kind of the thing we saw before, but now it's a 4th level spell. You can use an action to cast a 4th level spell from it, roll a d6. If it's roll 1 to 5, you can't until the next dawn. And then we have that version, but 5th, 6th, or 7th. Or lastly, while attuned, you can't be blinded, deafened, petrified, or stunned. So those cover, so any one of the items that we're going to go through now could have 2 of those minor, or if you get it all the way exalted, 2 minor, 2 minor beneficial, 2 minor detrimental, 1 major beneficial. Okay, there's also a section on destroying them. Because they are evil artifacts, you may decide that you want to destroy them. And because they're so powerful, it wouldn't be easy. So each weapon's method of destruction is determined by the DM and should be unique and require at least 1 adventure to accomplish. If we use our 1 ring example from before, that was taking it to, I mean, if you're trying to think about it as an evil sentient artifact, that was taking it to Mount Doom and throwing it into the fires from whence it came. And that, again, something similar to that is what you want to accomplish if you're trying to destroy one of these. The DM can choose or roll on the table below. When one of the arms of the betrayer is destroyed, the soul of the fiend within the weapon returns to its home plane and begins to plot destruction of the creatures responsible. That is something else. Each one of these, the sentient creature within them, are all a fiend of some kind. So here's a couple destruction methods. It must be bathed in the ichor of an archdevil or a demon lord. A coven of 12 night hags must perform an 8-hour ritual known only to them on the plane of Gehenna to destroy the weapon. Jeez, these are rough. Must be brought back to a forgotten forge in Jorhas and melted down by the furnace that made it. There's our volcano there. Fiery breath of an ancient red dragon. I've heard that that's actually been done or mentioned in a couple of different Forgotten Realms lore things. Get an ancient red dragon to breathe on it to destroy it. Must be devoured by Ukatoa. Thrusting the weapon into a Luxon beacon. Destroys it and the beacon. That's interesting. Can only be broken by a blow from another one of the arms of betrayers, which would mean you'd have to seek out another one just to destroy it, and then potentially you're back at square one. And burning the remains of the first champion to wield the item destroys the item. Cool. All right, and then we have we're going to jump into it. We have several here, so this is going to be a lengthier video, so just bear with me. Blade of Broken Mirrors. And I think this is another one. Unfortunately, we don't have art for every single one, and that's kind of a bummer. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a dagger. It requires attunement by a humanoid, which means that like fiends and fae can't use it. It's a weapon of Tharzadun, a jagged piece of stone, described in a maze-like pattern. It is a sentient magic, chaotic evil weapon with an intelligence of 21, wisdom of 24, and charisma of 24. It has hearing and dark vision out to 120 feet, and it can communicate telepathically with its wielder and speak, read, and understand Abyssal and Common. So something to consider, again, with sentient weapons is this one specifically says it can communicate with it telepathically with its wielder. If it can do so, then that means it kind of bypasses the need for language. But it can speak, read, and understand Abyssal and Common. So this thing, mind you, this dagger, it can see out to 120 feet, and it can see and hear in the dark. But it can also speak Abyssal and Common. So this thing can just talk out loud to anyone. It doesn't just mean it talks to the wielder. It can talk to anyone. So something to consider if you're trying to wield these and your DM thinks about it in this way, your item could be like, hey, these guys are sneaking up on you. Look out. If it wants you to die or you're not following its path. Things to consider. Sometimes it'll say like they can only speak. Sometimes it will say they can communicate telepathically. It'll tell you which ones it can and can't do. So this is an insane, especially this one, right? An insane Glabrazu named Ragazu lives within the Blade of Broken Mirrors. It yearns to cause chaos. It learns its wielder's principles and then uses those ideals to encourage reckless action. It whispers ideas of revolution. So in its dormant state, you get to speak, read, and write Abyssal. It's a +1 dagger. Immediately after you make a range attack and throw it, it returns to your hand. Whenever you kill a human with an action using the Blade of Broken Mirrors, with an attack using the Blade of Broken Mirrors, the blade remembers the creature's appearance. While holding the dagger, you can use an action to change your form to match any humanoid the blade remembers. Your statistics other than your size don't change. Any equipment you are wearing or carrying isn't transformed. You can revert to your true appearance as an action. You revert to your true appearance automatically when you die. When the Blade of Broken Mirrors attunes to a new wielder, the appearance of humanoids it has killed are wiped from its memory. So this could be an amazing like thief style weapon, like a head of a thieves guild or something, because if it kills somebody with it, it can turn into them. Very cool. Awakened, it is a +2, and then it gets the ability to cast some spells from it with a DC 15. Fabricate, Hallucinatory Terrain, Major Image, or Phantasmal Killer. Once a spell's been cast from the dagger can't be that spell can't be cast from the dagger until the next dawn. Fabricate's an interesting one. I kind of like that. And then the Exalted version, it becomes a +3 weapon. The DC for the things we had before, which is 15, is now 17. And while holding it, you can turn invisible as an action. Anything you are wearing or carrying is invisible with you. You remain invisible until you stop holding the dagger, until you attack or cast a spell that forces a creature to make a saving throw, or until you use a bonus action to become visible again. So very cool stuff. Again, depending on the scenario, right, your sentient weapon, it may be beneficial, right? This thing has dark vision and hearing out to 120 feet and a wisdom of 24. So it may, in theory, be able to see things you can't because it has a very high perception. Stuff to consider with sentient weapons. Then we have Grovelthrash, which looks to be a Warhammer, and this one we do have art for. Requires attunement, is not specific to a humanoid. The Warhammer of Torog hums with magical energy and is carved with images of faces screaming in pain. Grovelthrash is a sentient neutral evil weapon. Intelligence 18, Wisdom 15, Charisma 19, hearing and dark vision out to 120 feet. It communicates telepathically with its wielder and can speak and understand Abyssal, Common, and Infernal. And Ultraloth, which is a type of Yugoloth, it's the kind of one that looks like a typical gray alien, named Syria, lives within it. The weapon values material possessions and doling out pain. It complements its wielder whenever they claim treasure and takes pleasure in harming others. Dormant state, you can speak, read, and write Abyssal and Infernal. It is a +1 Warhammer. When you hit with an attack using it, you deal an extra 2d6 damage to the target. If you do, you can deal, an extra 2d6 damage to the target. If you do, you take a d6 psychic damage. The Warhammer deals double damage to objects and structures. And while holding it, you have advantage on insight checks made to discern a lie spoken in a language you understand. Awakened, it becomes a +2, and then you gain a burrowing speed equal to your walking speed. You can use your burrowing speed to move through sand, loose earth, mud, or ice, but not solid rock. Whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you hits you with an attack while you're wielding it, you can use a reaction to deal an amount of psychic damage to that creature equal to the damage you took from the attack. Can't be used until the next dawn. Gotta love retributive damage. Again, these are evil things, but I could definitely see good characters wanting to wield them, depending on how things work. +3 weapon at Exalted state. When you have fewer than half your hit points, it does an extra 2d6 damage on a hit. That is not tied to that first feature. Oops, that is just a general thing. And you can burrow through solid rock now at half your burrowing speed and leave a 5-foot diameter tunnel in your wake, and you can now cast the DC 17 Earthquake, meld into stone or stone shape, and then once you cast a spell, that spell can't be cast until the next dawn. I like it. I could definitely see like an evil dwarf potentially wanting to wield this hammer, or a very interesting type of cleric, I imagine. I mean, I know fighters can wield it, but I always picture warhammers with clerics for some reason. All right, Lash of Shadows. This is badass. Look at this thing. It's a whip with snake heads, and it says it's touched by the power of Zahir and ends in 5 animated serpent heads. I automatically think of Lolth because all of the priestesses of Lolth wield snake-headed whips, but maybe there's a Lolth weapon coming up later. All right, Chaotic Evil, Intelligence of 18, Wisdom of 16, Charisma of 20, Hearing and Dark Vision out to 120 feet. It seems like they all have Hearing and Dark Vision out to 120 feet and can communicate telepathically with the wielder and then also speak, read, and understand several languages. It also was always funny to me to think about, like, this one is Abyssal, Common, and Draconic. So let's say, in theory, you come across an artifact with a script written in Draconic. You could hold your weapon up, and your weapon can read it and read it to you, even though you can't. A Mad Marilith named Sizzlefeth lives within it, Lash of Shadows. She has a short temper and experiences only extreme emotions and is most happy dealing with harm. Mariliths are these 6-armed demons with the snake kind of lower bodies. Dormant State, you can speak, read, and write Abyssal and Draconic. Well, I guess in this example, my reading Draconic doesn't help you. Is a +1 whip, and you can attempt to poison any creature that is hit by it. They must succeed on a DC 13 con save, or suffer the effect of one of the following poisons of your choice. Once a poison other than Serpent Venom has been used, it cannot be used again until the next dawn. Serpent Venom is, if it fails the saving throw, it takes 3d6 poison damage, half on a success. Deadeye Poison is another one you have access to. Saving throw against this poison, if they fail, they're poisoned for 1 hour, and while poisoned, they are also blinded. The Awakened version, it becomes a +2, and the poison DC goes to 15. It now gains Ghoul's Blood Poison. A creature that fails a saving throw is poisoned for 1 minute. While poisoned in this way, it is paralyzed, and then it can repeat the save at the end of each of its turns. The Exalted version becomes a +3 whip. Its poisons is DC 17 now, and you get Cockatrice Tears. A creature that fails a saving throw against this poison begins to turn to stone and is restrained. It must repeat the save at the end of its next turn. On a success, it ends. On a failure, it's petrified for 24 hours. So my biggest detriment and dislike, I guess nitpick if you will, about this is that it has 5 heads and it has nothing that really happens with that, unless you literally consider the fact that wait a minute, no, there's only 4 poisons. I was going to say if there was 5 poisons, then each head could deal a different poison, but it doesn't do anything specific to the fact that it has 5 heads. Like, if it lets you make more attacks or lets you do extra damage, or something could happen if multiple heads like latch onto somebody when you whip out with it, but it doesn't, and I feel like that was a missed opportunity. All right, next up we have Mace of the Black Crown. Here we have this here. It's got a little bit of a horn on the end. This is an Asmodeus based weapon here. It is sentient, lawful evil, intelligence 20, wisdom 12, charisma 18, hearing and dark vision out to 120 feet, communicates telepathically, and can speak, read, and understand common and infernal. A greedy Erinyes named Zartaza lives within it. She wants to recruit more souls for Asmodeus, so the weapon pushes its wielder toward lawful evil actions by manipulating the wielder's dreams. A former Blood War general, Zartaza hates demons and relishes crafting sound battle plans in any conflict. So, Dormant Stage, speak, read, and write infernal. It is a +1 weapon. You'll see that's kind of a theme here. But while holding the mace, you can use a bonus action to speak its infernal command word, causing flames to erupt from the head, which I would have loved to have seen art of that too, because it sounds awesome. These flames shed bright light in a 40-foot radius, dim light for another 40. While it is ablaze, it deals an extra 1d6 fire damage to any target that it hits. The flames last until you use a bonus action to speak the command word again, or until you are no longer holding the mace, and while you're holding it, you can use an action to summon an imp. Any devil you summon with this mace is friendly to you and your companions for the duration. The imp obeys any verbal commands that you issue to it, and it returns to the 9 hells 10 minutes after you summon it. This property can't be used until the next dawn. At Awakened, it becomes a +2 weapon. The extra fire damage is now +2d6 instead of 1d6. You can now summon a Bearded Devil, which is, a challenge rating 3, so we're getting up there, as opposed to an imp, and you have resistance to poison damage while holding it. And at Exalted, it becomes a +3. The extra fire damage increases by 3d6 fire damage, and it ignores resistance to fire damage. And you can now summon a Barbed Devil, which is a challenge rating 5, and you now also get resistance to fire damage while you're holding it. So +3, 3d6 extra fire damage that ignores the resistance to fire damage. Summon a Barbed Devil and have resistance to poison and fire damage. We have Ruin's Wake up next here. This is a spear. I think these all have just been requires attunement. So this spear is for Grumpsh, the orc god. Intelligence 20, wisdom 16, charisma 22, hearing dark vision out to 120 feet, telepathic, speak, read, and understand abyssal, common, and orc. A slaughter-loving Balor named Yarrowish lives within Ruin's Wake. The weapon desires only to draw blood and pushes its wielder to solve problems with violence. See, like, some of those you could think about, like, what it's trying to force you to do is something that certain players would probably be okay with. Like, it wants you to draw blood and pushes you to solve problems with violence. I know plenty of good characters that's their go-to response, is use violence to solve the problem. In its dormant state, you can speak, read, and write Abyssal and Orc. It is a +1 weapon, deals an extra d8 damage to any target it hits. Immediately after you make a ranged weapon attack, it flies back to your hand. Very cool. As a reaction, when you are hit by a melee attack, you can make a melee attack with Ruin's Wake with advantage. against the attacker. You can't use this property again until you finish a short or long rest. So that's good. Reactionary damage is always good, and it's an advantage, which is even better. At awaken, it becomes a +2 weapon. It deals an extra 2d8 damage. When you hurl the spear and speak a command word, it transforms into a bolt of lightning, forming a line 5 feet wide that extends out to a creature you can see within 120 feet. Each creature in the line, excluding you, must make a Dexterity 15, DC 15 saving throw, taking 8d6 damage on a failed save, or half as much on a success. Ruin's Wake returns to your hand. This property can't be used until the next dawn, so it's basically like a Javelin of Lightning, essentially, except it's basically letting you cast a lightning bolt with the spear thematically, but it comes back to your hand, which is great. And then at Exalted, it becomes a +3. You can let out a battle cry as a bonus action while holding it. Each creature you choose within 30 feet gains advantage on attack rolls until the end of your next turn. Once per dawn, until the next dawn. That's kind of similar to a Zealot Barbarian, although they think they get advantage on saving throws too. And when you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with an attack from the spear, you regain hit points equal to the damage you dealt with that attack. This property can't be used again until the next dawn. So that's pretty cool. It has a retributive damage thing. It lets you basically cast a lightning bolt. It lets you boost your allies, and it potentially gives you some healing too when you kill people with it. Very nice. And then we have Silken Spike, another one, unfortunately, we don't get a picture for. And this, I think, is the Loth one. Yeah, this is a rapier made of spider silk, and it is blessed by Loth. As an intelligence of 13, wisdom of 15, charisma of 15, hearing and dark vision out to 120 feet, communicate telepathically with its wielder, speak, read, and understand abyssal, common, elvish, and undercommon. Of course, it's Loth, so there's a Yochlol named Cinefex inside it. Yochlols being the kind of melted wax, candle-looking creatures that are handmaidens of Loth. It speaks in whispers, pushing its wielder to trust no one and kill those who cause the slightest personal offense. Very fitting for a Loth-based weapon. You can, Dormant State is speak, read, and write, abyssal, elvish, and undercommon. Dark vision out to 120 feet. If you already have it, it's extended another 60. Sorry, out to 60 feet originally, and it's extended 60. If I don't know if I misspoke there. It's a +1 weapon. You can use an action to coat the rapier's blade. The poison lasts for 1 minute or until attack is made. Creature must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for 1 hour. If they fail to save by 5 or more, they're unconscious while poisoned in this way. This is basically drow poison. Anybody can get this if you look it up in the Dungeon Master's Guide or D&D Beyond. This is drow poison. And while carrying it, you can move up, down, and across vertical surfaces, up against walls, climbing speed equal to your walking speed. It basically gives you spider climb, Loth being the spider queen. That makes sense. The awakened state, it becomes a +2 weapon. The saving throw for the drow poison becomes DC 15, and you can now cast the following spells with a DC 15: Cloud, Kill, Darkness, Levitate, or Web. Again, 1 spell per till the next dawn. Fitting for a Loth-based weapon, and then at Exalted, it becomes a +3 weapon. The saving throw DC for the weapon's poison and its spells increases to 16. Magical darkness no longer impedes your dark vision, and while holding the weapon in dim light or darkness, you can use a bonus action to teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also in dim light or darkness once until the next dawn. Very cool. I have a lot of like shadier characters that wield rapiers, so this would be great for them. Next up is the Bloody End. This is a Morning Star for Bane. A Bloody End is sentient, lawful evil, intelligence 22, wisdom 18, charisma 24. Once again, hearing dark vision out to 120 feet, communicates telepathically with its wielder, can speak, read, and understand common and infernal. A tyrannical pit fiend named Izilzi, I guess is how you pronounce that, lives within the Bloody End. It boisterously pushes its wielders to subjugate others and never back down from a challenge. If the wielder doesn't demand fealty from others, the weapon is happy to demand it on their behalf. Dormant State is speak, read, and write infernal. It becomes a +1 weapon. While wielding it, you can cast the following spells with the DC 13 save: Charm Person, Dominate Person, and Fear. And then while holding it, you have advantage on intimidation checks. Awakened, it becomes a +2 weapon. Saving throws increase to 15, and when you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with an attack using the Bloody End, you can cause the following effect. Each creature of your choice within 15 feet must make a DC 15 saving throw or be frightened until the end of your next turn. Once this is used, it can't be used until the next dawn. And when a creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to deal 1d6 psychic damage to the attacker. There's no recharge on that, so that's great. And then the Exalted State, it becomes a +3 weapon. You add Dominate Monster to your list of other spells. The saving throw DC is for the spells, as well as for the creature avoid to be frightened here when we just got, becomes a DC 17. And when you use your reaction to deal psychic damage, you can the amount of it increases to 2d6. You can do 2d6 psychic damage instead of 1d6. And lastly, the last one is the Will of the Talon. So we already saw a vestige, which is interesting. We saw a Vestige of Divergence for Tiamat, which was the, what the hell is that thing called? Wreath of the Prism. And now we have Will of the Talon, a war pick for Tiamat, which has a black, blue, red, green, and white gems carved into this war pick. Again, one that would be cool to have the art for, but we don't. It is Lawful Evil, Intelligence 14, Wisdom 15, Charisma 19. Hearing Dark Vision, 120 feet, communicates telepathically with its wielder, can speak, understand Common, Draconic, and Infernal. A short-tempered bone devil named Astralon lives within the Will of Talon. The weapon is greedy and values strong leadership. It demands that its wielder take decisive action to keep order in high-pressure situations and to always take a fair share of treasure in return. See, that one doesn't seem like it's that bad. To make you be decisive, believe me, I'm sure we've all been there as DMs. Sometimes we love our players to be decisive, other times not so much. But keep order in high-pressure situations, that sounds like a good leader. And take a fair share of treasure in return, realistically, you're probably doing that anyway. So the war pick here, Dormant State, speak, read, and write, Draconic, and Infernal, +1 war pick. As a bonus action while holding it, you can cause the following effect. Each creature of your choice that is within 30 feet of you and is aware of you must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom save or become frightened for 1 minute. They can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns, ending it on a success. If they succeed, they're immune for 24 hours. This effect can't be used until the next dawn. Makes sense. It's like a frightful presence for a dragon. While holding it, you get a breath weapon as an action. Pick a damage type from the Will of the Talon breath weapon table. Each creature in the area of the exhalation must make a DC 13 saving throw. Creature takes 3d6 damage on a failed save, half on a success. When you use the war pick to unleash a breath weapon of a specific damage type, you can't choose that same damage type until the next dawn. We have acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. Cold and poison are con saves. The acid is a 5-foot, 30-foot wide long line. Cold and fire are 15-foot cones, as is poison. And then the lightning is a line as well. When it becomes awakened, its attack and damage rolls, it becomes a +2 weapon. DC for the breath weapon increases to 15, and it now deals 4d6 instead of 3d6. Its saving throw for the frightful presence increases to 15, and while carrying it, you have resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, and poison damage. And then the exalted version, it becomes a +3 weapon. The breath weapon DC becomes 17 proper, and it deals 5d6 damage. And the frightful presence property increases the DC to 17. I would have liked to have seen potentially more use of the breath weapon, but you do get to use each one of them, so that's not too bad. And it's going to deal 5d6, and having 5 breath weapons is pretty sweet, plus the fact that you're going to get resistance to the 5 most common elemental damage types. You don't have thunder resistance, but that's pretty uncommon. Mostly you get lightning a lot of the time. So yeah, that is the Arms of the Betrayers. So let me know what you all think in the comments about these. I am a fan. It's interesting that, you know, we've seen vestiges in campaign 1 that were weapons. There were several that were weapons. All the ones in here are more or less items in Wildemount. There's a couple that could turn into weapons. But all of the Arms of the Betrayers, very probably aptly named, are armaments, right? They are arms, weapons. And it's interesting because, again, remember what I said, every single one of those properties that we discussed, you're also going to have 2 minor beneficial properties and 1 major beneficial property. So you're going to have things making these even more powerful depending on what you roll. So that could be very cool. I do think it's interesting that there's a vestige and an arm for Tiamat, which is weird to me. Because she's very decidedly an evil dragon god, but she gets like a good weapon or good item and a bad weapon. I don't know. Part of me thinks, again, the Wreath of the Prism is just there because Archon had a version of it, and they didn't print it in the Taldore book by Green Ronin. So Let me know what you all think in the comments about the arms of the Betrayer. Which one is your favorite? You know, like I said, I'm a little bummed. I love whips in Dungeons & Dragons. I'm a huge Castlevania fan. I have been my whole life. So I always try to make a cool character that uses a whip in D&D, and they're always suboptimal because whips do crap damage, and there's no real magical whips. This is, I think, the first official printed magical whip. There are other weapons that could be whips, like a vicious whip or a whip of warning, but I think this is the first official printed Dungeons & Dragons 5e item that is always a whip, and it has cool 5 snake heads, and that means nothing mechanically. Like, that's just how it works. I don't know. I feel like there was, like I said, I feel like there's something lost potential there. But I think I do love the, was it Grovelthrash, the Warhammer? I like the Warhammer a lot. And I like Silken Spike, the Rapier, a lot. I think those are pretty cool. I also really like the spear, the Grumsh spear, just because spears don't get a lot of love in D&D either. I feel like the way they're designed, like spears, tridents, I'd say even more so. But like they're an item I feel like that gets overlooked because there's just better mechanical options, so people don't typically choose them. I don't know. Let me know what you all think in the comments below. So this covers our magic item coverage for Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Next up, I'll be going through all the new monsters and beasts and things that have been added before we go back and hit some of the other more fluffed kind of stuff. We're going to be talking about the Heroic Chronicle, the backstory building piece, as well as you guys wanted me, enough of you have come out and said you wanted me to talk about lore and the gods and things of Wildemount. Again, I'm familiar, I'm up to date on Critical Role, so I know as much as I can from watching the episodes, so I have an understanding, so I can cover those as best as I can. And then a lot of you have been asking me to cover the Tal'Dorei Guide, the book that came out a couple years ago that was published by Green Ronin Press, because there was, you know, obviously a lot of you recently are learning of my channel because you love Critical Role, and this is all Critical Role based content, so I guess it only makes sense to me. So I'm going to finish out Wildemount completely, all my coverage for that, and then I will intersperse some Tal'Dorei campaign guide stuff in with my regular content, amongst top 10s and fixing it videos and things like that. But I will say, because a couple of you have mentioned this too, I do have a Discord channel. There's a link down below in the description if you'd like to check it out. We have a lot of cool people over there hanging out, talking D&D. A bunch of people have been setting up games in the looking for player, kind of looking for group section, because we're all stranded and can't get out to our local game, so everybody's been setting up online stuff. I also do have 2 giveaways going on currently. One is for a bunch of really good third-party products from my friends at Jetpack 7, and another one is a copy of the book that I'm reviewing right now, as well as some dice and some other things. So the links for both of those are in the description as well. And lastly, if you like D&D live play, gameplay content, I do have a secondary channel. There's a link in the description for that as well. It's called Nerd Immersion Plays. That's where I've been uploading all of my recent campaign stuff. There's a ton of stuff on this channel already if you look back. Previous campaigns that I've run in here, a lot of pre-written stuff. But in an effort to split out the people who want to watch gameplay and people who want to watch these kind of videos, the secondary channel has a lot of that. That has the current ongoing campaigns over on that channel. There's my homebrew campaign of Everend, which I run every Tuesday night in a completely homebrew world that I made up. So if you like kind of the stuff, how you see how Matt makes up his own homebrew world, I did the same thing. My campaigns, there's about 70-something episodes. We also have an evil campaign with a party of completely evil characters. And then I'm also a very new as a player in a 4-episode thus far that is currently, I guess I should say, my stuff streams on Wednesday where I'm on Tuesday on Twitch. There's a link for the Twitch down there too, on Tuesdays. And then I play in a game where I'm basically playing more or less a Jedi, a Blade Singer, and a game run by my good friend Jordan here on YouTube. We stream that on Twitch on Wednesdays. So those are still ongoing. You can catch them live, but if you want to just soak up some D&D content while you wait for Critical Role to resume, maybe you'll find something there that you like. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe and ring that bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.